This is a Trojan horse to get people used to having a digital currency, a full surveillance currency. This is sound money. And, here's a big difference, right? Where is this Bitcoin, which, by the way, is not really gold, but they want you to think of it like gold. So that's the color of it, all the cryptocurrencies. What color are they? Gold, silver, or platinum? Because that's the way they want you to think about them.
We are now looking at gold, which is 50% higher than it was. Can you tell us your thoughts on everything that might be fueling this rush into the gold markets?
Well, first of all, you did bring up the fact that I've been studying currency life cycles since 1987. And so there is not even one teeny weeny doubt in my mind that the system actually died in 2008 and we're transitioning into a new system. But at the moment, what we've got, and more than likely for the next 4 years, is a whole lot of market uncertainty. Because there's, as they like to say, there's a new sheriff in town, but, President Trump, the way that he negotiates is by going in and changing things and dictating big things that are going to happen. And then that throws everything off. And so what you're seeing is a rush to safety in the true the only flight to safety asset that runs, the only financial asset that actually runs no counterparty risk.
Don't you mean, aren't you talking about this right here?
No, I have one of those, though. I want you to think that that's actually...
I thought this is real money, isn't it?
Yeah, no. This is a Trojan horse to get people used to having a digital currency, a full surveillance currency. This is sound money. And, here's a big difference, right? Where is this Bitcoin, which, by the way, is not really gold, but they want you to think of it like gold. So that's the color of it, all the cryptocurrencies. What color are they? Gold, silver, or platinum? Because that's the way they want you to think about them. But it's used in one place. And actually, it's used as a risk-on asset. This real solid gold is used in every single sector of the global economy. So it has the broadest base of functionality and the broadest base of demand. This has been tested thousands of years. This test is coming up.
Well, I always say that gold is actually used in the computer chips that Bitcoin is printed on. So, it's just funny how that all works, with gold being the most precious of metals that is used in semiconductors in order for Bitcoin to do its thing. But that's usually lost on a lot of crypto guys.
Well, the interesting part about it, though, is that like diamonds, they've figured out how to make lab-grown diamonds, right? But they've never figured out how to create the same exact attributes of both gold and silver in a lab. So they have unique properties. There's a finite amount of them. And it's much easier to get cooperation. They can't force us into using a digital currency, but they can inspire us to use it and get comfortable with it. And then it's like the frog in the pot of water. By the time you're done, you're cooked and there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, and it's much like the move to like a cashless society too. I'm realizing that I almost never use cash anymore. I mean, it just kind of occurred to me the other day. But yeah, I mean, in the same way, they're sort of surreptitiously creeping us towards the use of these digital currencies. Well, what is your take on gold? What is causing this increase in the price of gold? Is it tariffs? Is it the repatriation? Is it shortages? What is it?
It's all of the above. But I'd say primarily it's uncertainty in the markets because markets need certainty. So when the central banks were using the tools to let forward guidance, this is what we're going to do. Now, all you guys get into position to benefit from them, but they're not doing that anymore. And so there's a lot of uncertainty, but what is actually happening that in all the years that I have been in this business, and that's on some level, as you indicated before, it's actually probably about 60 years. I've never seen this where we have that clash finally between the physical gold markets, of which there is a finite amount, and the digital gold markets, the derivative markets which is primarily in the US. And now there is usually those markets are just about trading because everything's been turned into a trade, right? But there are some large entities that are demanding physical delivery from those paper contracts. And the level of collision that I'm seeing, I mean, Bank of England is sending over to the US, that's repatriating their gold that they're holding for other central banks. What happens if those central banks want their gold back?
It's a run on the banks, but for gold, essentially.
Exactly. So when you ask what's happening, yes, there's a lot of geopolitical uncertainty around the world. I mean, seriously, around the world, take your pick where. But you also have inflation that they can't seem to figure it out. And why is inflation so sticky? Well, I don't know. If you had a tool and it was paper over stuff, maybe you wouldn't care so much, right? I don't know why this has lost so much value, even though I've created a whole bunch of them and put them into the system. So it's also the inflationary pressures. And even though I think it was Nigeria that just changed how they calculate inflation, so therefore households inflation, not so bad. But the US does that all the time too. And now we're even losing a lot of the data that wasn't great data to begin with. And they readjust it 3 months out after the markets have moved based on that data. Now the data is even worse. So I'm telling you, there's no clarity in anything for most people. For me, there's lots of clarity because we are at the absolute end of this fiat money experiment. This stuff has officially no purchasing power left. It's just existing by the confidence in the public. That's a problem.
So who do you think is buying this gold? Who's repatriating the gold to the US? And to me, it seems strange because, after Trump got elected, there was a Trump slump in gold and it crashed like 10% or so. And now it's basically back at all-time highs. We might even see today it hit 3,000 for the first time, which is crazy. Do you know who is bringing this gold back? And is there some ulterior motives? Are they worried about some global crisis impending? Because we're seeing the same kind of numbers as we were at the beginning of COVID.
Right. Well, that is a really good point. And I don't know exactly who, but my bet would be that Ray Dalio is in there. He's a huge gold buyer, and not because he's worried about tariffs, but he is preparing for a global revolution. And so am I. I'm working on building a global community to make sure that in this new monetary system, we have a component of convertible gold. So it's much more than taxes and tariffs. And, you're doing what everybody else does, which is Wall Street trained us to look at that spot market and think, well, that's what gold is worth. No. So even above 3,000, that does not reflect its true fundamental value. And I cannot give you a whole lot of guarantees, but I can guarantee this. At some point, all assets, all instruments move to their fundamental value. So how do you know what that is? Because if you don't know what that is, then how do you know whether it's undervalued and you should buy it, fairly valued and you should hold it, or overvalued and you should liquidate it? How do you know that? The only way you really know is to determine what the true fundamental value is. The Federal Reserve very nicely tells us what the fundamental value of this stuff is, and this is true around the world, because if you look on their purchasing power chart at the Fred, F-R-E-D, everybody can access it in the search bar. Just put purchasing power of the consumer dollar, and then look on that left axis, and down at the bottom where it started out as 1,000 and moved some decimals, so there's your dollar, it's a big fat zero. And in fact, there are over 4,800 currencies that have gone to zero because governments cannot help but keep doing this, right? Central banks and governments cannot help but doing that. So how do you get that for gold? Well, actually, it's very simple. This is fiat money. This is sound money. They're both money, but they're the flip side of the coin, right? How is this money created in our system? Debt. They create debt, they create money. So if you want to know what the true fundamental value of an ounce of gold is, you simply take all of the debt that's ever been created. I do it globally because this is a global issue. And the last time I checked, it was like $313 trillion in debt that had been created. And we're not even talking about the derivative bets on top of that, but just go with that for a minute. There's an unlimited amount of debt that can be grown, but there is a finite amount of gold. So you just divide the debt by all the gold that exists in the whole world, because gold is indestructible. And the Department of the Interior of the U.S. runs a study on an annual basis of how much gold and how much silver is above ground, so has already been mined, and is in ground, so is yet to be mined. And so if you simply divide the amount of gold that exists by the amount, or the amount of debt that exists by the amount of gold that exists, that gives you somewhere north of $40,000 an ounce. But people put value in this. So when they create that spot market, this is actually why they created the spot gold market, was to manage how you think about gold. And a rising gold price is an indication of a failing currency, but more importantly, a rising gold price is an indication of an imminent catastrophe. And so when you're watching the gold prices rise and you're saying why, the answer is that there is an imminent crisis, and I can't tell you exactly the moment. But why would somebody like Ray Dalio or somebody up at that level, because those are the ones that can afford to take delivery of 500 ounces of gold at spot, right? Those people are making the rules, know the people that write the rules, can influence the people that are writing the rules, and they are getting into position to weather this storm, because we are transitioning into a whole new financial, economic, and social system.